I'm starting off with a basic sketch of a lion. It's from a photo I actually took at the zoo, and I'm just filling my paper with water and then dropping in my primary colors. So I started with yellow, and now I'm adding in a little bit of red. And I'm just trying to kind of pay attention to where the darks and lights are, putting a little bit more bright color in. You can see now I'm going into the blue. I'm using another brush that's dry to kind of lift out a little bit of color because I do want some sections to remain white. And then now I'm going into the corners to add blue and to add a little more bright color in certain areas around the lion. I let that dry, and you can see I sprinkled some salt, which gives that fun effect on the left side. And now I'm going into the eyes with some detail. I started with yellow, added a tiny bit of blue and a little bit of red. Now I'm using a blue to start adding some details to around the eyes and the nose. This is like a cerulean blue. I did just use red, yellow, and blue, but for the blues I used a cerulean blue, so a lighter blue, and then a darker blue like an ultramarine or Prussian blue for the dark blues. And I'm just kind of paying attention to the areas that are a little cooler. You can see I've started adding some more color to the mane of the lion. And for this time, I'm kind of getting the area wet a little bit and then dropping in some color, or I'm just going in wet onto the dry paper. And I'm starting to pay attention to the direction that the hair grows. So I want to make sure to use kind of hair-like brush strokes and make sure that I'm paying attention to the direction that it moves. Now I'll do a little bit of blending. I am blending some red and yellow to make this orange shade. I do want to darken that a little bit. And throughout this process, especially on the mane, I do, while the paint is wet, sprinkle a little bit of salt here and there, and that salt gives it some coarse texture. So there's a little bit of salt. You can see I'm sprinkling it while the paint is still wet, and it just adds some texture to the painting. I'm trying to kind of define the face shape a little bit more, so I'm using some of those darker colors, more intense colors right around the mouth and the side of the face to kind of help tell where the face meets the hair. As I layer this, I usually try to make sure that the layer underneath is dry before I add another layer on top. That way the colors won't just kind of get all muddy. Really trying to push the darks in here with less water and more pigment. I'm kind of making a purple with my blue and my red, so that gets nice and dark. I really want to define that face shape. I'm doing the same kind of around the ear. Sorry, I cut it a little bit off on camera, but I'm just kind of going around the outside ear shape here. All right, now to get some detail in the eyes. So I switched to a smaller brush, and I'm using that same red and blue mixture, which creates a nice dark rich purple. If I add a little bit of yellow to it, it makes it to where I've almost mixed my own black. And by using lots of paint and not a lot of water, I can get it nice and dark. I just want to kind of define the eye area. I like to do my super dark darks early on so that it kind of helps me with my values, so that I have lights, I have the mediums, and I have the darks. So the lights are there, I'm getting the darks in, and then the rest of the time I'll be working on getting those medium values. I'm just filling in where I see the darkest areas of the lion. And then I'm also paying attention to where the blues are. doing just some of the details. The focal point, of course, is the eyes, and then you should probably look down at the nose and the mouth, so I want to make sure that those are nice and strong. The other ear back here is kind of getting lost in hair, but I do want it to kind of hold its own, so I'm trying to kind of make it so that that one isn't lost too much. I darken the center of that one. I'm darkening the center of this ear, trying to make all the little hair that goes in front of it too. I'm trying to again consider the way that the hair grows, the direction, how the length of hair, and try to show that with my brush strokes. There's a tuft of fur up on the top of the lion's head that's really dark, so I'm going in with some blue and red so that it's kind of a more purpley color, and I really want to kind of get some of those darks in there, and that way the medium values will be easier to add. Just kind of using my brush to draw those areas in, and I'm trying to always consider that this is fur, so my lines should not be too straight or perfect, but more furry lines. I want my ear to stand out, so I'm doing the dark right behind the ear and a little bit more on the inside of the other ear. Watercolor also usually dries lighter, so it may appear that I'm putting this in super dark, but it will lighten up a little bit as it dries. All right. I want to go ahead and throw some of the background in too. That will really help the lion come forward. And for the background, I'm just using blue with a little bit of red to make some purple. And then I'm also switching to this brush. It has really uneven hairs, and I use this kind of brush to do fur all the time. It's wonderful to give you kind of this fur-like texture on the edge of the lion. So I can go kind of right up around the background to work on those edges, and then that will really help the lion stand out, kind of frame the fur. I'm always considering the direction that fur is growing, trying to make it so that it's kind of a rough outline, not too perfect. And I'll also use that on other areas of his fur too. This brush is just so great at doing fur or human hair as well. I use it a lot for hair. I use it for grass too. So just those uneven bristles really work great for that kind of texture. Doing the same thing in the top corner on the left here, where I am just trying to brush around the lion's fur. This is called negative painting, so I'm painting the negative space around the positive space here, and that makes the positive, the subject, which is the lion's hair, really pop, come forward. I want my background to be pretty dark, so I'm not using as much water, and I'm really trying to lay a lot of pigment into the painting. I'm using a darker blue and then a red with mixed in here and there just to kind of give it a purpley tint. It's also smart to use kind of a purpley tint with this lion because purple and yellow are opposite on the color wheel, so the two of them right next to each other really stand out. They're complementary colors. And I'm brushing all around the lion very carefully, trying to make sure that I don't go too far in. Just touching finishing up those corners. You can see a little more red on that side. I'm going back into the face while I let the background dry and adding some more details, some more value onto the face so it's not quite so light. I'm just switching back and forth between those primaries again, so yellows, mixing a little red if I want it to be more orangey, and then a little bit of the blue too for the cooler areas of the face. Trying to pay attention to the texture too, the length of hair. The face hair is not as long as the mane hair, so I'm kind of dabbing more at the face where I'm trying to use more brush strokes with the mane. The chin of my lion is still very unfinished, so I wanted to kind of focus on some of the parts below. And this is tricky because the photo reference that I have was actually a lion eating some type of thing. I don't even remember what it was, but he had his paws kind of by his chin, so I didn't really have a reference of his chin. I've kind of had to make this section up, but I looked at a couple other pictures of lions to figure out kind of what it might look like, and I definitely wanted to make the chin stand out from the mane, so I'm darkening the mane underneath and around the chin by using a mixture of all three primaries. So the red and the yellow make the orange, but the blue will tone it down a little bit so it's not quite as bright of an orange. And it doesn't take much blue, just a little bit, to make it kind of more of a brown color. And then I wanted to add a little bit of blue into the chin so the white wasn't quite so bright. Just kind of scrub at some of these colors to blend them a little bit more. Darken areas here and there. I've got kind of a purple mix. I used some red with some blue. It's more on the red side than the blue side. And adding that a little bit too to kind of darken the area around the face, and by doing that, that makes the face kind of stand out, come forward towards the viewer. And I'm trying to be really careful along the bottom edge of that chin so I don't mess up the fur-like feel. Always paying attention to the direction the fur grows. There are a couple areas that are still a little bright, so I wanted to darken them a little bit by going back in with some yellow mixed with red to give kind of those orangey tones. I'm just kind of in a sweeping motion, pulling that fur away from the face. When the fur is shorter, I'm dabbing it more. This area was a lot darker, so I wanted to really go in and lay in some rich darks with some purples by mixing blue and red. I also wanted to darken some of these creases in the lion's forehead. And then I'm just kind of dabbing so that it doesn't look like very long hairs around his eyes. He has a little bit more of a shadow going on, especially on the left side here, so I really wanted to kind of bring some more vibrant color, some richer color to the side of his face, so it wasn't quite so bright and light. I'm also adding a little bit under his eyes. Some more of the reds, just trying to really push the colors to make it pop. And then he's got all of these whiskers I'll be adding in later, and those have those little dots that they come out of right along his mouth. So I wanted to kind of throw some of that in there, kind of indicate those for when I start adding whiskers later. My eyes are just constantly going back and forth from the lion to my reference photo, trying to make sure that they line up and it's working well. The colors are matching, that my values are working. I'm getting dark enough in certain areas, light enough in other areas. Now I'm just kind of going through and adding some finishing touches here and there. I'm really jumping kind of all over the place, just looking for areas that need to be darker, areas that I want to stand out more. I am really trying to push my values so that I've got some really nice darks in there, some really bright brights. It'll make it more interesting for the viewer to look at. I'm really trying to make my colors pop. Sometimes just going in straight with the blue or the red or the yellow, just to get that vibrant color in there. I also wanted to add some bright blue around the eyes and a little bit more blue in certain parts of the face. Little shadow in the eyes, some more defined dots for where the whiskers will come out, a little more detail in the chin, and especially around the face to make that face stand out from the hair around it. Now I'm using a Posca pen. These are really nice painterly type pens, and I'm using that for my whiskers. I could use like a white paint, like a gouache or an acrylic paint, but I like the way the white pen works too. So I'm just trying to lay in some whiskers on both sides to give that detail to my lion. There's quite a few whiskers. I'm trying to kind of pay attention to where they're going. I didn't wait for my paint to dry too, so on the side of the face here I'm pulling some of the purple with my white pen too, which is fine. I'm not too worried. I'm throwing a couple in by his chin too, a couple little white whiskers here and there. Just to give it a little more detail. These white pens are so nice to use for whiskers on any animal. They're also nice if you have someone very blonde to add little wispy hairs like by their face. One of my favorite tools, the Posca pens. It's a great brand. I'm also going to use the Posca pen to go ahead and sign my work. I'm going to write L, Ehlke on the side there. And the last step, of course, is to take the tape off. I usually try to pull the tape away from the picture so I don't rip the painting that I just worked so hard on. Thank you so much for joining me in this watercolor tutorial. And please subscribe to my channel if you are enjoying these videos. And I hope to see you again soon. Thanks for watching.